Welcome to Stuck in My Mind podcast, the show where we dive into the mind of a regular guy on his road to self-discovery. You'll hear everyday people just like you share the latest topics, personal stories, and things they've learned along the way. And now, please welcome your host, Wise.
And welcome to another episode. I am your host, W-I-Z-E, and I have a special guest on. He is a polymathic scholar. Welcome to the show, Jim Marshall.
Thank you.
How you doing, Jim? How you doing?
Fine. How are you?
I am doing well. All right, Jim. My big question is, what is a polymathic scholar?
Well, a polymath is somebody who's educated in a wide range of subjects. If you want to know my areas of expertise, I'll be happy to list them for you.
Yes, sir.
Okay, well, my areas of expertise include psychology, philosophy, theology, parapsychology, science, engineering, mathematics, law, literature, history, metaphysics, military science, political science, physical culture, organization, education, and music. And I hold a Bachelor of Science cum laude from City University of New York.
Wow. That is a lot. So, all right. So what is it exactly that you do? What is your teaching?
Well, I have discovered hitherto unknown human phenomena from which I constructed a revolutionary philosophic system called Septemics and published in a work called Septemics, Hierarchies of Human Phenomena. This book would dramatically improve the life of anyone who takes advantage of it. And if you want to find out about Septemics, go to septemics.com. That's SEPTEMICS. There's a massive amount of data there that'll tell you all about it.
Okay. So, all right. So you graduated from St. Francis. Are you originally from New York?
Yes.
Because I'm a New York boy myself. I was born and raised in Brooklyn.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. All right. So you developed this system, this program, and can any regular person, like say someone like me, if they were to apply this to their life, would it change? How would the change affect them?
Well, I wrote this book to help people. This book was worked on for 25 years and was carefully prepared to be of benefit to anyone who can read English, who wants to improve himself or his life. And it's very specific, and everything in the book is extremely detailed. So I had the intention of making it applicable to as many people as possible.
Okay. So does it encompass a little of everything that you've learned in your life, all the things that your I guess your expertise in, all the fields that you apply, all those things you're expert in into the system?
No, actually, the system is something that exists in nature. This is based on natural law. It was discovered empirically. It has nothing to do with me or an opinion or a theory. Septemics is a philosophic science based on the fact that many phenomena related to human beings occur in a sequence of 7 levels. Literally, the word septemics means of or pertaining to 7. Septemics comprises a collection of scales or sequences, each of which breaks down various human phenomena into a hierarchy of 7 steps. There are 35 such scales which span the spectrum of human experience, by which I mean there is no situation that's going to arise in the life of a human being that will not be addressed by one or more of these scales. It's universally applicable to all people in all situations. 24 of the scales apply primarily to individuals, and 11 of the scales apply primarily to groups.
Okay. So how? Okay, all right. I'm sorry. Wow. So how long have you been working on this on this system?
Well,
Oh,
I actually worked on the book for 25 years before I published it.
wow.
But the information came to me much earlier than that. In other words, this came to me over the years. See, I was a human development engineer. I worked with hundreds of clients over many decades. And as I was doing this, I started to observe that my clients would improve in predictable ways, meaning they were going up scales. Now, I never told this to anybody, but I wrote it down. So eventually, I wound up with about 32 scales of varying lengths. Only 2 of them had 7 levels. Now, I had one scale in particular that had 6 levels that I knew absolutely was correct. But in 1995, I discovered a 7th level for that scale. When I did that, the scale clicked in mathematically, which is to say, it manifested mathematical underpinnings. When I saw that, I realized this is big. So then I asked myself, I wonder how many of these other scales that I have of various lengths are actually 7-level scales. And because I knew what I was looking for, I was able to find the remaining levels on the remaining scales in a few months. So voila, in a couple of months, I had about 32 7-level scales. And the more I went into this, the more the scales verified themselves and proved to be natural law, meaning this is something I simply observed, I simply discovered, in the same way that Copernicus observed that the Earth revolves around the sun and propounded the heliocentric theory. Now, of course, the Earth was revolving around the sun for billions of years before anybody took note of it. And it's the same thing with these scales. These scales were there all the time. And I mentioned in the book that there are some wise people who know bits and pieces of this. I, because of my career as human development engineer and because of my polymathic background, was able to observe this thing when it presented itself to me. Now, I realized after I had these 32 scales that this is a separate subject. This is something new. This does not fit into any slot. And that is the main problem. Because, first of all, most people don't read books. Secondly, the people who do read books, most of them read fiction books. Of the ones who do read fiction books, the ones who do read nonfiction books, most of them are in a slot, meaning psychologists read psychology books, mathematicians read mathematics books, historians read history books, and so forth. This subject does not fit into any of those slots. All of those subjects fit into this. Now, in order to have a system that spans the spectrum of human experience, you would have to have 35 scales that are very different from one another. And in fact, each of these scales is unique. You can't find out anything about scale B by studying scale A. You can't find out anything about scale D by studying scale C. Each one is unique. And that is an advantage because that enables you to address everything. So whatever is going on in your life, in whatever sphere you're active, there is a remedy available through this book. And in fact, if you know the material, it's actually not hard to use. For example, the scale that I told you about before that had 6 levels and then I discovered a 7th level. That came to be known eventually as the scale of basic purposes. That's the first scale in the book. Now, I can tell you the basic purpose of every president of the United States, going back as far as Franklin Delano Roosevelt. Because I've observed these people. After Roosevelt, they were all either audio recorded, video recorded. It was easy to observe them as well as read about them. So I have no difficulty observing somebody and seeing these scales in action. Every human being is somewhere on each of the 35 scales. And when you find out what level you're at, it is an epiphany. It tells you exactly what's going on with you, and it opens the way to improvement. I wrote this book to help people. Each of these 35 scales provides the user with an infallible way of determining the salutariness or the beneficialness of any group, individual, or activity. If the group, individual, or activity moves persons or groups up these scales, it's beneficial or positive. If it moves persons down these scales, it's negative or detrimental. Moreover, just finding out what level you or another person or some group is at is by itself enlightening and beneficial. And finally, once you know the level of a person or group, you can improve that person or group by moving them up one level at a time. Each of these advantages represent major steps forward for society. Each of these scales is an axis against which to evaluate human behavior. And combined, they empower one to understand, predict, and manage human affairs to a degree hitherto unattainable by most.
Okay.
So I have gone from helping hundreds as human development engineer to helping millions by getting this book out.
And when did you release your book?
The book was published a little more than a year ago, January of 2021.
So after 25 years, that's a lot of research. I'm sure there's a lot of research into that book.
Yes.
And so
yes, and if you understand me and how my mind works, it will be easy to see how that happened. I'm an engineer. In the engineering world, whatever you create must work. Okay, so I engineered this system the way any engineer would engineer any system to verify it and to be certain that it was workable before I released it. So here's what happened. I released the first transcript of this in very early '96. Immediately, I got glowing responses. I sent this to colleagues of mine who all had graduate degrees, all brilliant people, and they were all blown away by this book. So obviously that was encouraging. And then I started sending it to my clients and my friends and so forth. And all the feedback was extremely positive. If you go to my website, you'll see this. You'll see what readers have said about it, what people have written about it, what the reviews are. And I can tell you, over a 26-year span of time now, every single person who has read this book or discussed it at length with me has had a very favorable response. Obviously, everybody has a slightly different response because everybody is unique, but the response is universally positive. And that is because of all the work that I put in perfecting it. There are 35 scales, each of which has 7 levels. That's 245 different levels, each of which had to be verified redundantly and expressed in a way that would communicate to the reader. And as I worked with it, the consequences and the implications of these scales presented themselves as I looked into them. Each scale is presented on a table, or you might say a spreadsheet or a matrix. So when you look at it, the data jumps off the page at you. Every scale or every table representing a scale is like the periodic table of chemistry. Now, before Mendeleev invented the periodic table, there was chemistry, but he revolutionized it by taking all of the elements that were known at the time and putting them in a table in the correct relationship to one another. which made chemistry very easy to learn and very easy to teach and very easy to understand. Each one of these tables representing a scale is like the periodic table, and it will open that area of life to you in a way that you didn't see before. I know this because I've been seeing reactions to this for many years now. Would you like me to tell you what subjects are covered?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
So I'm just going to read the names of the scales, and you'll see that this covers pretty much everything that is significant to human beings. The scale of basic purposes, the scale of personal influence, the scale of choice, the scale of permeation, the scale of thought, the scale of identity, the scale of evaluation, the scale of motivation, the scale of control, the scale of stopping, the scale of scholarship, the scale of literacy, the scale of human ability, the scale of memory, the scale of spiritual identity, the scale of mental deletion, the scale of aberration, the scale of physical fitness, the scale of justification, the scale of belief, the scale of equanimity, the scale of attack, the scale of conflict, the scale of reaction. Those are the individual scales. And the group scales are the scale of relationships, the scale of life spheres, the scale of government, the scale of civilization, the scale of survival, the scale of management, the scale of exchange, the scale of communication, the scale of allegiance, the scale of sexuality, and the scale of politics. So you can see that since each one of these has 7 levels, it covers just about everything that's of interest to people that is covered in human phenomena. And so that's why I say this is universally applicable to anyone who can read English and wants to improve himself.
Okay, so the scale of influence, is that what does that scale pertains to?
You mean the scale of personal influence?
Yes, that one. Yeah, personal influence.
Okay. So there are 7 ways that people can influence one another, and they exist in a hierarchy. Some are higher than others. Everybody uses some of these. Most people use a few. And it tells you a lot about the person to know where he is on the scale. You want me to tell you what those levels are?
Yes, sir. Yes.
Okay. All right, let's see. Okay. Scale of personal influence. Okay, so the highest method of influencing somebody is telepathy, where you don't have to say anything. This is actually influencing people by will. Your will is so strong that the person will do what you want. Below that is charisma, which is a form of leadership. Below that is reason, which is logic. Below that is aloofness, which is restraint. Below that is domination, which is overwhelm. Below that is victimization, which is guilt. And below that is martyrdom, which is humility. So this is a spectrum of cause and effect. As you go up the scale, your cause is greater. You are at cause more. And as you go down, you become more at effect and less at cause. It's also true that this scale, like many, has a inflow-outflow manifestation to it. See, telepathy is an outflow, meaning you are reaching, but charisma is an inflow. You're not reaching out to people; you sort of pull them into yourself. Reason is an outflow. Now, this is important because the direction of the flow is inherent to the universe. This is a bipolar universe. In order to have an up, you must have a down. In order to have an in, you must have an out. And so everything in the universe operates on that basis. So when you have a scale like this that alternates inflow and outflow, it makes it indisputable that these scales are where they are listed. So you couldn't possibly have reason at level 2 because reason is an outflow. So you would have to have an inflow between telepathy and reason, and that is charisma. So that's just one of the mathematical manifestations of these scales. All of them have mathematical underpinnings. When you read the book, it does not come off as being mathematical, although there is some discussion of mathematics, and I try to keep the mathematics as simple and minimal as possible.
So something you brought up earlier was that people, when they read certain, whatever, if they're into, like said, mathematics, they read mathematics. If there's into psychology, they read. So how do you get people interested into wanting to learn this?
Well, really, it's for people who want to improve themselves or their lives, which is the majority of people.
Yeah.
As I said, anyone who has read the book or anyone who has discussed the book with me has had a very positive response. So far, every host has said, I'm going to get your book. Now, what I recommend is to go to the website, because there's a massive amount of information on the website telling you what this is, how it affects people, what people think about it, and you can even read passages of the book on the website. So I invite everybody to go to the website, and you can decide for yourself if this is for you. But I can absolutely guarantee you, if you master this book and use it, your life will improve.
Okay. Yeah. So I'm after this, I'm definitely gonna go get the book and I'm gonna read it and implement it, and then maybe have you back
Right.
on and we can discuss it.
Right.
Yeah, that'll be that. I'm always looking into learning and reading something, so I'll definitely
Right.
get the book and we can.
And I want you to know that when I discovered this system, I said, I want the people of Earth to have this so they can use it to help themselves and their loved ones and their associates. So I spent a tremendous amount of time writing this in a way that it would be accessible to most people. And part of that was there is a glossary for every chapter. In fact, there's even a glossary for the introduction. So I define terms very specifically. So when you read the scale, I've already defined those terms for you. There's no ambiguity as to what do I mean by this. And that solves some of the semantic difficulty that many people will run into. And that's why it took so long, because this is an 86,000 word book, and I had to go through word by word to evaluate how are people going to accept this? How is this going to influence people? And find a word that would communicate the subject in a way that most people would comprehend and appreciate.
Okay.
So it's for anyone who can read English reasonably well and wants to improve his life. That's what this does.
Okay. All right. All right. All right, Jim. Now is the time.
Also,
Go ahead. No. Go ahead.
go ahead.
No. Go.
All right. So I want to tell you that the data in this book are vital for every human being and can help you to achieve your goals faster and easier by explaining what might otherwise seem to be inexplicable or random. If someone were to invite you to a rendezvous, you would certainly expect him to tell you the exact location and perhaps also how to get there. Needless to say, it's very difficult to get somewhere if you don't know where you are, don't know where you're going, and don't know how to get to your destination. Now, this sounds idiotic, but most people do this regularly. For example, before the invention of GPS units, when I started driving, I was surprised to find how many people did not know geographically exactly where they were. More often than not, my request for directions to the location of the person on the other end of the phone was requited by vague and often inaccurate instructions, which often did more harm than good. I learned to ask only for the address, which many could not give anyway, and look it up on a map if I could. Now, if this is so with physical locations, it's even more so with conceptual locations because they are abstract. Most people wander through life aimlessly, so much so that it's considered normal. Whether discussing politics, career, romance, finances, health, you name it, most people do not know where they are, where they're going, nor how to get there. If you want to prove your or another's condition, these scales are extremely useful because each is a roadmap for some area of human activity. It enables you to find out where you are, where you're going, and how to get there in some specific context.
Okay. All right. All right, Jim. So now let everybody know, where can they find this book and where can they find you, all your information?
Okay, well, I invite everybody to my website, septemics.com. That's SEPTEMICS. And there's a massive amount of information there, including how to contact me and how to find the book. But if you just put the word Septemics into a search engine, you'll get a flood of responses, and it'll take you to all the people who are selling the book, which includes Amazon and Barnes and Nobles and the publisher, Author House, and so forth. So it's very easy to find. It's very easy to learn what the subject is. And I invite you to check it out.
All right. And
because I can tell you, I've gotten 100% positive reaction to this. Of course, if you can't read English, if you don't read English, that's a barrier, obviously. But there are 1.5 billion people who can speak English.
Yeah.
And if you study the book and follow the instructions that are in, because it's very explicit, there's no mystery how to use this, and everything is in the book. So there's a hardbound, a softbound, and an ebook. The ebook, of course, is the least expensive. So for very minimal investment, you can change your whole life, which is what I want. I want people all over the world to improve themselves, to resolve their difficulties. And the book will show you how to do that.
Okay. All right. All right, Jim, I appreciate you coming through. Just hold on a second. As soon as I finish doing my shout outs, me and you'll talk a little bit offline. But I'm definitely gonna share all your information when I release this episode, all the descriptions, all the websites, everything's gonna be in the descriptions of this episode.
Okay.
All right, so now it is time for shout outs. Big shout out to my Real Wise fam, Poppy J, Brandy J. Love you guys. Big shout out to the boss lady Fina. Love you, babe. Big shout out to my guest Jim Marshall for coming through and sharing his knowledge. And big shout out to all the essential workers out there. God bless y'all. Be safe. You know how Wise does it. Peace out.
Thanks for listening. Listen on iTunes, Podbean, Spotify, and TuneIn. Find us on social media on Twitter at wise_b_blunt, Instagram at wise_b_blunt, and a Facebook fan page, www.facebook.com/wise76. Check back soon for new episodes. Until next time, peace out.